this was one of those things that come along that somebody has an issue and at first glance, you think there's no solution. So let me share my screen real quick. This is, and the beauty of this to me was this was like a very collaborative effort between Manuel and I. Of course, he did most of the heavy lifting, but I get credit for asking him. All right, so let me raise the screen, make the screen a little bigger. And then let me show you what we wanted to achieve. Get rid of this. So this came from Jason. Guess who's on the call here? And hang on, I've got to pull up the email so I can show you. This is a question about what's called a food frequency questionnaire. This is a common form that is used by nutritionists, and we've tried to deal with this multiple times in the past. And we've created solutions, but what REDCap had to offer did not really allow us to handle the design. So this is kind of an example of the food frequency questionnaire where there is, in this case, there's a portion size, and then separate to that, there's a usage variable that they want to collect. So it's like there's two different fields side by side and sort of in a matrix setup. So in the past, this wouldn't have even been possible. In fact, when I looked at it for the first time the other day, when he sent it to us, I thought, this is not gonna really work. Did you want to say something, Jason?
No, it looked like a mess when I first saw it myself. When I got the hand paperwork first, I was like, and then look at the next below it. I tried doing the English and Spanish convert, and it's just totally, it's too much information on
right
columns and forms, and it looks messy. And
and another good point is, you can't just create a single matrix and have option buttons, because you can only check one, but there's two different things. And if you make it check boxes, then you allow the user to put inaccurate data in and check more than one box.
Yeah.
So the first thing we had to do was make sure he understood how the multilingual module worked. So we've done that now. Second, though, the first thing that I was thinking is, well, can we put in, the thing that has changed that made a difference for REDCap was field embedding. So my first thought was, well, can we have, two variables and set it up that way? But when you do that, your spacing on your option buttons is fixed, and it doesn't match what you're trying to do. So if you put a header in and all that, it didn't look right. So I tried a matrix. And the matrix, because it was following down, that worked. And you just kept creating a new matrix each time, but didn't put a header label or anything, and just used the numbers, because all of these are really numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, and so you didn't have to put in any text. So that kind of worked, but it was still a little clunky. What I really was hoping was there was a way to change the spacing between the option buttons so that we could create a header and then put the option buttons below. So let's look at our designer here. So here's sort of, you know, the ideal. This was what was ideal, where you could just create a variable for each one of these responses, because you were going to kind of need to do that anyway. And hopefully the export came out. Well, the export would come out right. The export's going to come out with the numerics. So let's just take the first one, and we have this. This is just an example, but it's fairly relevant. We have chicken here, and you know, what kind of chicken, and then we wanted this, you know, how the portion size. And so if we look at this, all this is 1, 2, 3, because we know that, you know, 1 is small, 2 is medium, and 3 is large. So we don't have to put those labels in. So we did that, and then created another one for the frequency. So all that was great, but as I said, it doesn't work because the spacing of the option buttons was off. So that's where manual comes in. And do you want to explain what you did, or do you want to share your screen or do something to tell people how you dealt with this?
Well, if you just want to right click or go into add a record so we can see how it looks on the instrument.
Yeah.
And then just right click on one of the radio buttons and click inspect. And then click on the span. So just above where you're at right now, where it says span class equals choice horiz. Yeah, that one. So you can see in the right where the styles panel is, where it says td.freq, F-R-E-Q, up to the right there. So what I did was, in order to use the CSS inspector and add a rule to adjust the spacing for those radio buttons, I added a class, an HTML class, to the table in the rich text editor. So I added a class called class equals SML for the first group, and then a class freq for the frequency for the second group, because both of those have different spacing. And so what I did was I just went into, once we built this and embedded the fields, I went into this inspect tab and just started messing around with the padding to get it exactly where I wanted it. And once I had that padding, then I could copy those values and put them in a CSS rule using the CSS injector. So Terry, if you want to go back to the designer, and click in the rich text editor in the source code.
Here?
Yep. So scroll down, and you'll see there for the three table data cells that I have a class of SML and a class of frequency. And the reason I did this is I could put that padding directly into each one of these, but if I have to change the padding and adjust it, I have to do it for everything. So if I'm able to just apply those styles to a class, I can just do that once in the CSS injector. So if you want to go to the external module, and then you'll see there that I've added padding to the top, which spaces out the cell so it lines everything else up horizontally or vertically across the table. And then each one of those, so you can keep scrolling down. And then that's the rule that I made. So anything that's in the table data cell that has a class of freak, I'm targeting the spans within that have a class of choice fours, which is the horizontal tag that REDCap adds. And I'm doing that for both the SML and the frequency to adjust the spacing for each one of those. So if Terry was to add another row to the table, so if Terry added, like if we created PS3 and another field, so go back into the, well, you want to go back to the designer because you have to add it. And just go ahead and add click on the, well, go back out of that, Terry, and just click on the row, the bottom row, and then just add a row underneath. Because I want to show them how it looks if they don't have the classes for those table cells.
All right. Forgot what I said.
Chopped.
Oh, thanks.
So now that Terry's added another row, you can see that that chopped row doesn't have the same spacing, and the ones on the bottom are not as bad, you know, in the SML because they're pretty. It's a pretty small window anyway, but the ones on the right for the frequency are. And so if Terry goes back to the designer and just adds those class values to that row, then they automatically get updated with the styling rule.
Like magic.
Yep. And the way we have it set up in the designer, so the radio buttons don't have values, they have values, but they don't have labels. And that's just for ease of use, but you can add a CSS rule. If you're uncomfortable having those radio buttons without labels, you can add the labels and then just create a CSS rule the same way, where you just set the label value, the display value, to none, and then you'll see it in the background when you look at the data or you look at the design, but you won't see it in the front end.
So I have to do that CSS coding on every section that I have, because I have like 230 some food items listed here on this form that they want.
We didn't say it was going to be easy,
And
but
then also the choices, like halfway through, instead of the 3 times a day, it goes to 6 times a day, 3 to 5 times a day. So those choices also change. So will that have to be?
you'd have to create a new descriptive. You'd have to create a new descriptive text
field.
Yeah, and then rebuild this. But the beauty is you pretty much can. I don't know, Jason, how much you've used HTML or whatever, and we're certainly available to help you with this. And that goes for everybody. I mean, we're showing you stuff that is advanced, and we're aware of that. The purpose of showing you this is so that it can be done. And so we don't expect you to be CSS experts or HTML experts or even understand all of this. However, if you want to do advanced things, these are the kinds of things you need to become familiar with. And the more you use them, the easier it gets. So some of this was relatively easy to do, to change fonts and whatever, or colors. You can use your little selection options and, pick your HTML color, and the font you have to do programmatically, but all of the programming is done using in the source code area. And so once you start building a table, all of this is here already. So for you, Jason, you would just need to, if I were you, I'd build out all of your stuff and then go in and pop in the SMLs and the frequency. And, it'll look, this will look really nice. And actually, if you do this, I would be really interested in having you tell me when you complete it, because this is something that I would like to save as a template for other people to use, because this has not been built like this before, which mimics the food frequency questionnaire so precisely. So, but no matter how you went about it, you've built so many of these instruments that that you were going to have to build all those fields anyway. Even if you were building this into a matrix, you would have to add all these variables and all of this. So there's not a lot more work to do it this way. It is, a simple matter, I guess, of once you get here, you just right click and then insert these rows afterwards. And the more that you have, the more you can insert. So,
well, and Terry, it would be, if to save you some of the work too, you could just go into the source code and copy those 3 values or that group of table row.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
The ones that have the class values.
Right. That's a good point. So what he's saying, Jason, is, you take this and then you just start copying it into these, and then they're already set for you, and you just have to change the name,
The labels
the
and
variable,
yeah,
that it's referencing. So, this just kind of gets you started. And yeah, it's going to be work, but at least you can return it, be a hero to your to the people you're working with.
Yeah.
Because this is really something that's not been available before. So I was really jazzed to see the final product and that it can be done. And because I said this is one of those things that people will want to reuse. So, you know, put in the time, and
Yeah, it's gonna take a while.
it will take a while.
Quick question though on going back into your fields where the radio buttons are at. So you're just putting 3 of them and not actually labeling them, so to speak.
Yeah, there's no need for the label because they're all following from above.
So
And
that
the
the table that you create in the embedded fields is what's going to be your set
Yes,
defining point, correct?
yes, right.
And then I'll have to create another one, like I said, when it comes halfway through with the 6 times a day, those variable or those choices change. So I have actually 2 embedded fields, so to speak, to capture those sections.
I'm sorry, ask me that one more time.
The first one here has the 3 times a day, and all
Yep.
all those food items that are associated with that would be within that embedded field
Yes.
portion. And then once I change later down, I'd have to create another one. So those choices are in a table itself for the 6 times a day, 3 to 5 times a day, or whatever. So those.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so Terry, if you copy that table, if you go back to the, you can either have it as the same field, like if you went in there and just copied the table and had it all embedded in the same thing, or if you just copy that field. That's a nice thing about having the classes, is that those rules apply to those classes for everything. So if you had another table that had the same values 3 times a day, 1 to 2 times a day, that kind of thing, the spacing is going to be the same. And so as long as you have that, add that class of frequency or freak, that rule is going to be applied to those rows. And so you don't have to change any of that. You would just have to take the time to add all the foods, and then the styling will automatically be applied.
And remember that once you're into this and you find yourself like lost a little bit, then just reach back out. And if you decide there's another solution that you want to use, like when Manuel and I were talking, he mentioned, one option for you could have been a field up here for portion and a field up here for
Times a day.
times, and then you just had a drop down in these areas, and you just, each field was just a drop down. So, that's certainly an option if you would prefer to do that. My goal was to try and find a way to capture the visual, duplicate the visual of the original paper food frequency questionnaire. That was the goal.
All right.
All right.
I appreciate the time, effort. The other question, I think, if you go back to the email I sent, there's also a portion in there, which I don't know how they're going to design. They wanted to fill in a portion of, like, say, the list of items that weren't here. So it's additional food items that they could potentially fill in the blank.
Right.
So how would you, you have to have the food item over there. So you can't leave that blank, or can you? I don't know.
Well, yeah. So what you would do is create a text field. So I'm just going to come down here and add a field, and this will be a text box. And
would this be blank here?
All right. So there is a new feature here. This is an external mod, or this is an option, if I remember. I haven't used it yet. Do you remember what the deal is so that you can type in what goes in there and then you type over it? Do you know what I'm talking about, anybody? I think this is it.
Say that again, Carrie.
It's a placeholder.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
placeholder. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Okay. So now the variable name is whatever, and then something like this. Isn't this how that works? Again, I had. So that doesn't seem right. Oh, wait.
Terry, you have to identify your placeholder name.
Yes. Like this. Is this what we're talking about?
Sorry, yes.
Okay. There we go. So we get this, and then for we'll go back to our design here, and then here we'll, instead of the text, we'll put in helps if I know my variable name. Okay, so I mean, you would need to obviously change these, make this chicken PS 75 or whatever it is to match what this is, but that way they can type it in. So if we look at the record status dashboard, you can see there's a place to, and it's giving me these errors because it's the same field and you can't do that. But you see how this works, where you type in your field and then your food, and then you can fill in the blanks that equal like option 1 and option 2 or whatever.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Cool. Got my work cut out for me.
Well, good luck with it, and we're available if you need any help along the way. So just let us know, and let me know when it's finished, because I'd be interested to see what you ended up with.
All right, cool. Other quick question I also saw the color complete rows or whatever. So it might be helpful since there's so many of this, food items. So once they put the information in, it's supposed to change the color so that they can see if they miss one, or I don't know if that's something included in an embedded field or not. If you could do that, the colored, I think it's called complete rows or something like that, as another external module to add that, so that it like highlights the information.
I still don't. Does anybody, Manuel, do you know what he's talking about?
Say that again.
I think there's another external module. It's called a color
Matrix?
complete rows or whatever.
Oh,
And then it will like kind of highlight once the participant answers or puts in.
There is, but I don't.
It'll highlight or colors it.
Yeah, there
In the
is, but I don't
field?
know if it works on matrices.
Yeah, I didn't know. I just thought I'd ask, because since there's going to be so many, 200-300, plus food items, and eyes are gonna cross before get to the end. So if there's a way to kind of highlight and then see which ones are missed or whatever by the end of the.
Oh, you know what, Terry? It might work because we're not using a matrix.
Right, I know. But that's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
But we are using this embedded thing, so I'm not.
Yeah, the field embedding might.
Yeah. Plus, I don't know about. Let me get rid of the error part here.
Yeah, one more to get rid of, Terry. That group right there.
Oh.
Yeah, all the way up to the, yep.
All right, so that gets rid of my error message. Let's see what we got. If any, and why is this whole thing green? Is this because it's?
Yeah, it's because it's active. So if you look at it, it is going to show you that it's complete, but only the
Yeah.
entire thing.
Yeah, not each individual row or each individual food item.
Yeah, it's not. I think it's not going to, because this is really one item.
All right.
It's not, even though it's individual and you're collecting data individually, I think it's made to work on individual like variables. But when you look at this is really one with embedded rows. So I think it's not going to work on that.
Okay.